Okay, welcome back to the second part of One Man's Faith. We were looking at Hanukkah just to bring it to you, but they lit the menorah, and now the oil basins could only contain enough oil for a day of the menorah being lit the entire time. But they lit the menorah, and the menorah stayed lit for 8 days until a fresh batch of olive oil, that's what they use, olive oil, was pressed and made usable as fuel for the lights. And so hence the celebration of Hanukkah, or the Feast of Dedication, is what came about because of that. It's not a feast that God gave, like Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles. Those were the 7 that God gave. This is an extra, but it was an indication that God was still involved with his people. And so that starts on the 13th. It goes for 8 days. It's a celebration of the fact that God stepped in and God helped the people through a very rough time. And so I just want to encourage you, celebrate Hanukkah. Celebrate Hanukkah. If you have some Jewish brothers and sisters and friends or whatever, say, hey, happy Hanukkah. Just let them know that you understand. And it's not that you have to. You don't have to do everything that they do for Hanukkah, but it's good to understand, because listen, whether you want to believe it or not, you have been grafted in to the Jewish faith. Sometimes we don't understand that. We don't like to comprehend that. We have this mentality that the Jews did wrong and they are no more God's people, and that's a bunch of bull. Israel is still the apple of God's eye. Israel is still the people that God chose. The church comes alongside, and we are both going to be celebrating and both be at the wedding feast of the Lord, I believe. And we, as a matter of fact, I think it's Ezekiel talks about the fact that if we don't, as Gentiles, don't celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, we won't have rain for the next year. So, I've said several times, we need to understand and learn the feast, because it's part of what God has set up. And he called all 7 of those eternal memorials. So I believe, and even the mention of the Feast of Tabernacles, so that's going to be during the 1,000 years. That if a nation doesn't celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, they're not going to receive rain that year. And so I believe we're going to be celebrating those feasts during that time. So it's good to understand and know, so you don't get caught unaware, okay? And you can just see how God moved. And we talked before, the first 4 feasts, Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and Pentecost, have all been fulfilled by Jesus. So there's 3 more to come that will be fulfilled. Those 3 were at his first resurrection, or, as part of that. The last 3 will be part of his second coming. So they got the first coming and the second coming. And those 3 have not been fulfilled yet, so they're going to be fulfilled at the second coming of Jesus. Okay? So it's just, that's why I will always bring them up, because I think we need to be more understanding of what those feasts are and what they mean. All right, with that, drum roll, please. Let's go into Ephesians, and let's pick up. We were in chapter 5. And we were looking at the put off and the put ons. Okay? It says put off the old. In other words, in reference to your former manner of life, this is verse 22. In reference to your former manner of life, you lay it aside. You put it off. Put off the old. You are no longer that person. You are a new creature. You are different. This is chapter 4, verse 22. So we are to put off the old, and that you be renewed in the spirit of your mind and put on the new. Okay, so we're supposed to put off the old, and we're supposed to put on the new, and we are supposed to, in doing that, he goes and he says, hey, lay aside falsehood, put it off, but speak truth, put it on. Don't get angry and sin, but learn to control your anger. There are certain things you may get angry at, but don't get angry at people. That's what leads to destruction. That's what leads us into trouble. Most people, if you were to talk to them, I believe most people that you talk to that are in jail, they're because of anger. They did something stupid because our mind gets kicked into neutral, and we don't think when we get angry. And there's a spirit of anger that wants to lead you to destruction because it's part of the kingdom of darkness. And the kingdom of darkness it comes only to kill, steal, and destroy. It is never your friend. It never wants good for you. The only reason it wants you to celebrate, get drunk, do drugs, and things like that, because it leads to death. It leads to you being put off and become an ineffective person. And listen, you can even get hooked on good drugs. Drugs that a doctor gives you. You know that. Many pain medications are addictive, and you can get caught up in that, and it leads you down the wrong path. It will kill you. So we need to learn to put off these things. Put off anger. Don't get angry. Most of the time when you get angry, it's because a goal has been blocked. Something you wanted to do, something you wanted to accomplish, didn't get accomplished because somebody else stepped in and did something. Well, hey, we've got to learn. Unless it's a really stupid thing, and even then, we've got to learn that we can't get mad at people. We can't hold a grudge. We can't have unforgiveness toward anybody. It's not legal for you and I to get angry at people. We can get angry at the sin. But the anger, what it should do is lead us to a positive action, not a negative action with a consequence. So anytime you start to feel yourself roiling up, watch it, catch it. Say, wait a minute, why am I getting angry? And learn what is causing it. And ask for forgiveness, especially if it's anger toward another person. What we need to learn to do is when we see something wrong is to affect a change through love, not through anger. It should lead us, the anger should only lead us to want to accomplish something good. And that accomplishment has to be in love. It can't be out of anger Okay, so we put off anger that leads us down the wrong road, and we watch out being angry for any other reason. We are to lay aside falsehood. In other words, not lie, and we are to speak the truth. I just said that. Oh, we are to steal. We're no longer to steal, but rather we are to labor with our hands and make something and do what is good. Okay, so and the other put off here is let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word to put on that is good for edification. So watch what we say. Put off unwholesome words and put on words of love and edification. And then it goes on and it says, don't grieve the Holy Spirit. Verse 30, do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God. Grieve. In other words, if I could say this, the Holy Spirit gets hurt. That's a hard concept to understand, but the Holy Spirit can get hurt. How? Well, he tells us here. He says, let all bitterness, let all wrath, anger, clamor, slander be put away from you along with malice. So we're not to grieve the Holy Spirit, and we grieve him by you and I getting caught up in these negative aspects of life. Bitterness is gall. It's extreme wickedness. Okay, wrath is anger, heat. It's a boiling up that spews out and then comes back in, and then anger is temper. And we just talked about that. We understand that, but wrath is carrying anger to an extreme. Clamor means a crying, an outcry. Clamor, being loud, not in a good way. It's a crying out like in fear, and we shouldn't be doing that. Okay, hey, I got to take another break, so let's take that break, and I'll be right back.